So we are going to get started. Welcome to an episode of Questions with Crocker podcast. Yay. I am Dr. Crocker, and I'm an emergency veterinarian and a general practice owner with my husband, Shane Crocker.
Hey.
Welcome.
This is very strange, by the way.
This is a new experience, live podcasting on the floor of AVMA, but we're excited, and we are joined by Dr. Peter Weinstein, who is going to help us because he is a practice owner, consultant, and has owned practices. So we're excited to answer your questions. If you've never listened to Questions with Crocker, basically we source questions online at Questions with Crocker. And we have some here. And then at the end, we're actually going to be able to answer y'all's questions too. And I have a little bit of swag to hand out to people who ask questions. So thank you guys so much for being here. Peter, how are you feeling?
Doing great, Dr. T. Can I call you Dr. T?
You can call me whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here. You have been such a good mentor to us with our practice and with practice ownership. And so I'm excited to hear your insights. I know that we are not going to ask you a question we don't want an honest answer to, a little bit of a disruptor in vet med. And I think that that's good because we both believe that we can do things a lot differently than we've done in the past when it comes to veterinary medicine.
Absolutely. Status quo is unhealthy.
Yes, I do want to just say thank you to Bank of America for supporting our podcast today. We have used them in our practice ownership journey, which we'll talk a little bit about. But they were kind enough to sponsor this session, and we're excited to be here and share our knowledge with you.
Is Alex here?
Alex is not here yet. No. So, all right. So let's get started. First off, at vink.olives asked a question that is pretty general, but I think is a good place to start, and just said, where do I start? How do I start planning? And what tips do I have to get started?
It's a great question. And I can go back to The Sound of Music where, you've got to start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. I think that was The Sound of Music.
I don't know.
I don't think I watched that one.
Do, re, mi. That's all I think of.
Where do you start? Blank piece of paper, blank page on your tablet, pen, iPad, pencil, whatever you want to call it, and just start dreaming on a blank piece of paper. Put your ideas down. No idea is a bad idea. Do your research, do your due diligence, talk to people. The entire audience is out there that you can use as a resource. But start with a blank piece of paper because your success will be based upon the vision that you draw. That wasn't a Southern accent, was it?
That was very
more like
Southern
a
accent.
New York accent. But it'd be based upon the vision that you draw for the picture that you want to grow and build. And you don't want to build my hospital, and you don't want to build Tanasia's hospital. You want to build your hospital. So take that blank piece of paper and draw a picture. And if you're a visual learner, take pictures of other hospitals. Take them out of pages of veterinary journals. Take pictures of coffee shops. But start with a blank piece of paper and make it yours. Get a notebook, do it on a tablet, I don't care, but start with a blank piece of paper and ideas. And then step 2 is build a success team of resources and people that you can talk to. And they may be other veterinarians, they may be accountants, they may be attorneys, they may be architects, they may be financial planners, they may be bankers. But a blank piece of paper and a success team is the place to start.
Which at some point you have to have, right? I mean, you have to have all those other key individuals to make this thing come to fruition.
Absolutely. That and maybe a little LSD.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we definitely are a good team because I have things that I am strong in, obviously around the medicine, the culture that I wanted in a practice. I'm good at building a team culture. But when it came to knowing financials, to knowing how to actually do cost of goods, inventory management, all that, I really had to lean on Shane because he has a finance background. I'm lucky to have a Shane. Not everyone else is. And I also think your point of writing everything down, we talked about it for 10 years probably. What did we think a practice would look like?
We talked a lot.
We talked a lot of hypotheticals. I don't know if anyone else does that in their relationships, but a lot of hypotheticals, but a lot of dreaming, a lot of whiteboarding sessions, which I had never done before, but setting goals of what we wanted a practice to look like 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years out. And really every decision we made had to be based on those decisions and those culture points and what we wanted our practice to look like. So the other thing that I was forced to do, honestly, is make an organizational chart early on. So why don't you explain what that is?
Mainly because I didn't want to work for anybody, so I
You
needed
wanted
to
to
know
know who was
where
the boss.
where
Let's
I
be
fell
honest.
into this org chart. No, I think it's important just to understand the hierarchy. Who's going to make decisions? Who has authority to make decisions? Who are you going to hire into, right? If you have a position on a piece of paper that you have to hire into, having that vision up front makes a lot of sense.
Did you ever make an organizational chart?
I like to think of it more as an accountability chart.
I like that.
All right. Because what you're doing is telling people to whom they report and to whom they are accountable. And absolutely, I had org charts, and in most veterinary practices, those org charts work for about 36 hours till somebody gives you 2 weeks notice and leaves in 2 minutes. So I do think org charts are very important. Here's some obtuse thinking. Put the owner at the bottom of the org chart, not at the top. So you're creating a reverse pyramid, because what you want is the owner to be supporting the team, not pushing the team down. So put the ownership at the bottom and the leadership at the bottom of the org chart or the accountability chart, and work it up from there, almost like a tree rather than the other way around. But I like the thought of an accountability chart more so than an org chart.
Yeah.
Love that.
I would say we've already segued a little bit, but Shane does constantly tell me you don't want to have to be the decision maker for everything.
You don't want to be the bottleneck for everything.
It slows everything down. And so we've really built a team that even when I'm not there, they know the vision, they make decisions. Is it always 100% the decision I would make? No, but they know enough that they're going to mainly do what I would do. And if we have to kind of circle back after something, we can, but I trust them. They know what my expectations are. And so I don't have to be called all the time or have to be there for the practice to run the way I want it to. And that's because we've established core values, a culture, and I communicate that continuously. We don't have a once a month staff meeting where we talk about it. Every time I'm in the hospital, we're talking about what the expectations are and what I want it to look like. So I think that's really important. All right. I feel like we did a good start. Let's move on to our next one. So
I'm curious. This is more people than I anticipated showing up. Has everybody heard the podcast before? Oh, wow.
Okay.
It's not just our family.
Okay, that's good. We didn't. It's not just our friends we paid to be here in the front row.
I would say, how many of you people did you pay to be here?
Yeah. As
I wanted to
drinks
bring
on
in
us last
beer,
night.
but
So
yeah.
How many follow Tanasia on socials? Because there you go. There's where your friends come in.
yeah, there's a couple in here. So we do talk about our journey on social media. And I think that a big part of that is talking about the team and the other things we've done. So at Sarah Hahn wanted to know, how do you find the right people to help? And realistically, how long after vet school is practice ownership attainable? And I think those are both great questions, very separate. Who wants to take what?
Well, you work on the team, because I'm the veterinarian here who started the practice. So you can answer the team question.
Yeah, I think specifically when you're looking at professionals to help you, there's very specific questions you want to ask, and a lot of them have to align with your end goal, right? So if you're hiring a CPA, I would probably stick to somebody that understands veterinary medicine. I think that's very important. Or somebody that you've done business with a long time that you trust, and you could ask them a lot of tough questions and they'll give you honest responses. So that's important. When we looked at the financing for the practice, we called several veterinary banks that were specific to the veterinary industry and found one that just aligned to, our needs. They were able to move quick. They answered all the questions, the way we wanted them answered. And that was important to us. Same thing with an attorney. I think once you find, in our case, we found a banker that we really appreciated, Alex with Bank of America. And she helped us guide us to an attorney that we could use. We interviewed others attorneys, but she had a very specific attorney that dealt with veterinary medicine, only veterinary medicine. And we bought and sold a lot of companies, but those attorneys weren't a good fit for buying a veterinary practice.
They were too expensive.
That too. But I think it's important to have somebody that understands the business and build your team out around that, and understand you can pivot, right? If CPA is not working out, fire them and go find somebody else.
Well, and this is a small industry. So I honestly, word of mouth and networking is the main way that we built our team and even continue to build our veterinary team. I don't have ads out there. We are hiring via word of mouth, and we're
not hiring right now.
We just hired. Don't act like we haven't hired. We've grown since we bought the practice.
Didn't know I was doing counseling.
That's
we
right.
need to show we're successful, so they want to listen to what we have to say about practice ownership. Let's go. Okay, so great job. Okay, so I want you to answer, how long after vet school is ownership attainable?
How long how long after vet school is ownership attainable? I opened my practice 2 years, 9 months after graduating. I was nuts.
I was going to say good decision or bad?
Well, especially if you look back to the dark ages when I graduated, when tablets were stone.
Morse code was still...
Morse code, yeah. We didn't get a lot of business education in veterinary schools. Big shout out to the VBMA and to the COE that has started to require some communication and business courses in the veterinary curriculum. I do think probably 3 to 5 years, you really need to build your clinical skills, your banter, your exam room schmoozing, and you need to really learn how to be a leader and how to work with the team before you take on the role of ownership when you have to be both a doctor and a leader and oversee a team. So I really do think with the current graduates, and by the way, I have a daughter who graduated from veterinary school a year ago. She is no way ready to be open, and she won't be ready at 3 years out. So unless I manage the practice, which I won't do. So Brooke, if you're listening, I'm not managing your practice. But I would suggest 3 to 5 years out of school, but I would ramp up in those 3 to 5 years to learn the skills that you need that you did not get in veterinary schools. And by the way, that is not how to do a spay. That is how to hire somebody. That is how to fire somebody. That is how to deal with difficult clients. Now, I know none of you have ever dealt with difficult clients. They're all angels, and they all say yes to every treatment plan that you promote. So I really think the first jobs that you get should be a combination of learning how to be a good doctor and a good leader. And I can't emphasize enough the leadership component of it, because when you own a business, you have to be a leader if you want to motivate your team to deliver for you.
But are you ever ready to own a business? I mean, it's kind of like marriage or having a kid. Are you ever really ready?
You weren't ready to be married? What do you...
And we're vulnerable here. It's a safe space.
Would you like some help?
Yes,
16
please.
years, you've married 2 kids. I think we're doing okay.
When are you ever ready to be an owner? I think if you get too comfortable, you do get into trouble. So I think part of being an owner is to always be uncomfortable, because you've got so many balls in the air. It's like being a one-headed cat neuterer. You've got so many balls in the air that you're having to balance from that standpoint. So I don't think you should ever be comfortable, because if you get too comfortable, that's when the fecal material hits the oscillator.
I will say that I had a 10-year goal. Like, I was going to be an owner within 10 years of graduating. Didn't quite hit that. I went past it a little bit. But the experiences I had with vets I worked with that had successful practices, and really to say, I love what they do, I hate this that they do, helped shape me to be a much better owner. I was way too blunt early on. I didn't know how to give feedback. I didn't know how to really inspire people. I was more of a I'm going to tell you what you did wrong and you need to do better personality. And that's really, as maturing as a vet and being a part of multiple teams, I've learned a lot more about the leadership side of things. And I will tell you, it is not like I would rather go and do surgery all day. That's easy. I'd rather go and do crazy surgeries. I work ER all day. Talking to people, giving difficult feedback, making sure that they're taking care of the clients the way you want them to, that is the hard part. And no one's going to thank you for it as an owner. No one is. And so you have to know why you're doing it, and you have to be really confident in who you are. And I do think that does take time. So 3 to 5 years is a great time period, I think, to kind of have that maturity emotionally, probably too. And that was my experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're not taught communication skills in veterinary school at all. And you may have some of it in the curriculum, but it's the practicing of it. It's the repetition. How do you become a good surgeon? Do a lot of surgery. How do you become a good communicator? Do a lot of communication. And so the more you can practice your art and your science, the better you will be when you own your own practice down the road. Because as an owner, you wear 3 hats. You wear the hat of the technician, which is that of the doctor. You wear the hat of the manager, which is making sure the work gets done. And you wear the hat of the entrepreneur, which is to set the direction and the vision and the long-term goals for the practice. And you have to balance all 3, which means you're going to be communicating at all sorts of different levels. You're going to be communicating to a 16-year-old kennel person and a 65-year-old veterinarian. And so there's really a tremendous amount of work in terms of communication that we don't get that you need to practice. Oh, and by the way, we're all introverts. Maybe not
this
Tunasia.
one.
Maybe not this one, but it's really working on the art of being a doctor in conjunction with the science of being a doctor.
Yes. And we don't want to scare you from practice ownership. I still am so happy I did it. Talk to people all the time who really enjoy it. So let's keep giving some practical knowledge here. At Kimmy_33 wanted to know, how do you choose the area where you should be and market studies? So Shane, why don't you share first why we chose our hospital?
Because it was available.
That is not true. Talk about the development.
Well, I mean, we were in a great area to begin with, but realistically, we probably weren't going to start from scratch. A de novo really wasn't in the cards out of the gate.
There was no place to do it.
And we wanted somewhere that was close enough that we could actively manage, even if we weren't there every day. We wanted to have our finger on the pulse. So for us, it was more of an opportunity that came up close by. The economics of the deal made sense. They're developing all around us, so we know it's going to continue to bring in more customers. But I think if you have a whiteboard and you could pick, just put a dot wherever you wanted to go, I would look hard at the economics around the area. So what does the clientele in the area look like? Are they pet owners? Can they afford the Starbucks? I mean, there's some things you probably won't look at to know, can they afford my services? And what does the competition around there look like? So understand the competition, understand the cost of the real estate. There's several factors I would look at before I just pick a random spot.
We bought the land and the building, and so that was really important to us to own the real estate. And then when he says they're developing, they're literally putting hundreds of townhomes with like 3 dog parks in our backyard. And so we knew that development was coming, and we basically want it to make it where those people can walk to our practice. So we really were intentional about buying it and now renovating and making it where we can service more and more people. So that was our market study. It wasn't official, but we definitely knew what was going on in our city, and we're really intentional about it. What about you?
First of all, I think Shane should be a country western singer. I mean, he's got that voice right there, like Trace Adkins or something like that.
Listen, his head's already big. He's got the speaker badge at the
That's
conference.
right. They pass these things out like candy now.
Yeah. He got free drinks in the speaker room.
Right.
Like, this man, don't make his head bigger.
All right. So I'm in Southern California, and specifically in Orange County. And I was 2 years or so into practice life, and I was learning how to manage the practice I was working in. And my boss and I were heading to an association lunch meeting, and we drove by this shopping center. And the shopping center was at the base of a lot of horse property, which you don't believe actually exists in LA, but it does in Orange County. And also at the base of 50,000 new homes that were projected to be built over the last 3 years. There was one site left in the shopping center. And so I had my entrepreneurial seizure, and I went to the Chamber of Commerce for the city of Laguna Hills. I got the information of the demographics of the community, upper middle class, a lot of pet owners, horse people also have pets. And then I got in touch with the leasing agent for the shopping center. So I did a startup in a shopping center because really, especially in Southern California, you can't afford to buy the dirt.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really about doing your due diligence. If you're going to go out into an undeveloped area, you better make sure there's going to be people who will come to you. You need to also know how far people will go. There are certain natural barriers, also known as freeways, rivers, and oceans, that people can't or won't traverse. That you can pay for demographic research to find the number of pet owners, the ages of the pet owners, also the income, two-income households. Maybe you need to be open earlier or open later. Maybe you need to be open on weekends. And so do your due diligence, pay for some market research. And even if you're going to be buying an existing hospital, it would be worthwhile to do that. Take a map, put a dot on the map where the hospital that you may want to be is, and then put all the other hospitals around you. And figure out which ones are privately owned, which ones are corporately owned, and recognize where the colleagues are so you know to whom you can communicate with, and really do your due diligence. Take your time, because once you're open and once you're active, it's hard to move.
I would also say follow your gut. I mean, most people that are entrepreneurs at heart have a pretty good instinct. So follow that. If Tanasia says, hey, I think this would be a great spot, the instinct around that is probably pretty accurate. So I would start there and then start doing diligence around that.
Well, and we did a mental lesson where we basically, anytime we're going to do a new venture or new business, we walk through like, what is the worst case scenario?
We go bankrupt.
So worst case
Kids
is
don't go to college.
No. Worst case was we bought the practice. Everyone quit that worked there. We didn't have a veterinarian. Oh, wait, we do, because I'm a veterinarian. We didn't have anyone at the front desk. Oh, wait, my friend who's the practice owner could work at the front desk or as a technician. And I had Shane. I was like, worst case, we could still keep the doors open if we had to. But we also own a veterinary practice, and you can sell a veterinary practice no matter what. So we had an asset that we knew we could still sell if we had to. So our worst case scenario was not we go bankrupt, we lose our house, our children can't eat, right? It was we're going to have to work a little differently than we had planned on doing, but we still felt confident that we could do it and not be as worried as we possibly would be.
And ladies and gentlemen, here's a number to think about. And I heard this from a banker. 99.6% of veterinary hospitals succeed. So that means there's probably nobody in this room that will fail. So just do it.
That's a great point. I mean, not only the bank's saying that, but they're willing to throw the capital behind it.
That
so
leads
you
us
can
into
acquire, 100% plus some working capital. So they're putting their money behind those stats. So
that leads us into our next question, actually. So at Larson 11, Aaron wanted to know, what was the process of securing a loan? Did you have a loan, or were you owner?
No, I especially with a startup, we had a loan, and I had a co-signer because since I was an associate, and this was way back when, where they didn't look at your production alone, and it was a startup, I had a co-signer, and we went to a local bank in and around the community. The veterinary specific lenders, the B of A's of the world, hadn't really. How could the cheering be so great at the timing when I say B of A and somebody cheers? That's just wonderful. But we used a local bank because the veterinary specific lenders really hadn't built into the veterinary field quite then. I'm a big advocate of veterinary specific lenders because they know the profession, they know how to read a business plan, they know how to read a financial statement, and they're more likely to appraise the value of the practice more appropriately if you're doing buying an existing practice, and they know the demographics and they do the due diligence for you.
Yeah, I'm a confident emergency vet, but when it came to talking to the bank and having to give information to get our loan, I was beyond stressed. I actually was driving down the road and had to pull over because I was like, this is all on me. Like, if I don't give the right answers, we're not going to get the loan and we're not going to get the practice. And so it was amazing to have someone that could basically say, this is what you need to say. And that's really what Alex did for us. Is she said, if you want this loan, this is what they want to hear. This is what you need to say. And that was super helpful because I can do a lot of things, but I don't know how to get financing. So do you want to talk a little bit more about our financing?
Yeah, we started with the local banks. And obviously that was an opportunity. We could have went that route. We talked to some vet specific lenders. And actually, we referred over to Bank of America because of the type of product we were looking at, what we ultimately wanted to do. So the process went pretty smooth after that. It was just a matter of getting data sent over. Like you said, they helped analyze the business and make sure that it was a good purchase. Helped us with finding the attorneys and everything else. Insurance helped us, put together an insurance package that made sense. So we just kind of piggyback off that resource and got it closed.
One of the other things, as you take that blank piece of paper that you start out with, you're going to want to translate that into a business plan. And so for those of you who haven't written a master's thesis or a PhD thesis, that's essentially what a business plan is. It is telling your story about how you are going to take this piece of dirt or this practice and ultimately make it successful. And you're going to be you're going to guesstimate numbers that will look out 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years. And if you tell a really cool story and you tell a really great story of how you're going to be different, you're going to be the unicorn in a field of horses, the banks like that. And they want to see your story and the fact that you've actually thought through where you're going to be in 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years from that standpoint. So that blank piece of paper that's now all over the walls and everything else with pictures becomes a business plan.
Well, and if you buy an existing practice, what they wanted to know is what's the upside? How are you going to grow it? What are you going to do? And so I was able to say, they don't have this diagnostic modality. I'm going to bring this on board. My goal is this many doctors. We're going to renovate and we're going to go from 2 to 5 exam rooms, which we've done. So they wanted to see, yes, you're buying an existing practice, but can you maintain it and can you actually grow it because they're investing in you? And so those are the questions I had to really be able to answer. Luckily, we had so many hypothetical discussions that I had a fair amount of material for that. But that is the difference, I think, a little bit between a startup and buying an existing is you need to be able to say, this is what I can do with what I'm, bringing on board. Okay. I like all this information. This is awesome. This question I thought was really important because not everyone can do a startup or is doing it on their own. So at TM Newman wanted to know, what does it look like to try and buy into a multi-doctor practice? Because it is very different. And I will say Shane would never support me really wanting to buy into a multi-doctor practice as a minority owner because he said you have no real ownership. If they want to, they can sell it and you're not really going to be able to be in control of that.
Support's such a strong word.
Yeah.
Of course I would support you.
You
I
were
would coach you in maybe a different direction.
Negative when I brought that idea to you. Yeah.
True.
Okay. He was like, that's not a good idea. So.
No, I think you have to be careful in that scenario, right? So it depends on what does the transaction look like? So if you have and you've mentioned this several times, if you're going to partner up with somebody, they're really like your spouse. So you need to make sure you understand that relationship really well to begin with. If you're comfortable with that, if you work there long enough, you feel comfortable with the relationship, then you have to look at the deal structure. You have to come with cash. If they're going to say, look, you can buy 10% of the company, but you have to bring $300,000 in cash. Do you have access to cash? Can you, refinance your house and pull cash out? Or are they going to gift that to you in the form of bonuses? So maybe you prolong your bonuses, and instead of the bonuses, you have equity. So there's different things you can maybe do to buy in without coming out of pocket with cash. But the bank's not going to loan you money on the backbone of a vet practice that you don't control, that they have no real collateral with, et cetera. So the structure of the deal is important. Also, there's a thing called operating agreement. The operating agreement is really important. If you're going to be a minority owner in a illiquid asset, meaning you can't just sell it immediately, you need to understand what are your rights inside that operating agreement. Do I have any control over hiring? Do I have any say-so if they want to sell to somebody? Can I block that? You want to have some piece of that operating agreement that you have some control over, that you're comfortable with in making this financial decision that could impact, 20, 30 years of your life.
How do you feel about minority ownership or multi?
So in most cases, if you're going to be buying into a multi-doctor practice, you'll have work there. And so you, in many cases, have also built up the value of that practice over the time that you're there. And so as a minority owner, you will continue to grow that practice. And when you go to increase the number of shares that you own, you want to make sure you're not buying the equity that you have created. So there has to be an agreement at the beginning as to how you value the practice over time as you're buying more and more stock. I have no problem with minority owners if there's a crystal clear, defined contractual agreement that gives you the ability to grow and buy in more and more over time. What frequently or infrequently happens is that you have no voice and the senior owners want to sell, which is great because you'll probably get a greater return than you would have just as an associate, but you're not going to have a voice and you may not have right of first refusal, which means they can sell to a national organization and you're not going to have a voice to get out. So and there are, by the way, non-competes are enforceable if you are a partner in the business. So it's an interesting dilemma. I have no problem. And in fact, I would have no problem with 25% owners in a hospital. And if I were dreaming about a future hospital, it would be like 3 veterinarians each owning 20%, a manager owning 20%, and a technician owning 20%. So you build your long-term success team, and they've got equity in the building and in the business. So they're going to help to grow it from that standpoint. I have no problem with minority ownership. It's just
the way it's structured.
It's the structure, clarity, communication. And, you have to decide how to get in and how to get out.
Well, and the first right of refusal is also really has to be ironed out, because first right of refusal could mean they say, well, you need to match the corporate offerings that I'm getting as a private practitioner, which you can't, right? And so first right of refusal also needs to be not just I can say yes or no. It needs to be we are saying it's worth this much at this point in time, and in the future, I will buy it at this multiple or this percentage. Like, the more clear you can make between the two, great. But I have a ton of people I know that stick around for first right of refusal, and they can't compete with the other offers. And so really it's not valuable.
Well, I do agree, but I also think that in this day, in 2024 going forward, the ability to compete with the national corporations and with the support of the banks is going to be easier and easier. Do not be intimidated by the evil empires that are out there. Be motivated to be.
He said it, not me.
I'm a Yankees fan, so we're the evil empire. But I would not be intimidated by that, because I do think there's so much opportunity for independent hospital ownership, and I can't emphasize it enough. Don't be worried about anybody else. You will not be able to get the money if somebody doesn't think they can give you the money.
I like it. All right. So at Samantha Forgan wanted to know, what do you have to say about 2 upcoming veterinarians that are married? So they have double the debt coming out of vet school. They want to start a practice by 29 and also want to have a family. So what sort of financial foundation do they need to have? Do you have any tips for them about how they can tackle their debt? So I felt like that would be interesting to hear your thoughts, because I cannot imagine how much debt that is for a single household.
Well, if you look at the average student debt at about $180,000, you're looking at 2 students who own $360,000, but you're also looking at 2 veterinarians. Student debt is good debt when it comes to the banks. And so I wouldn't worry that much about your student debt, because as an owner, statistically, you will be making significantly, almost twice as much over the lifetime of ownership than you will make as an associate. So don't worry about your student debt. It's all the other freaking debt that you have that you have to worry about. And if you're buying a good business with good cash flow and good profitability, your student debt will be actually paid off sooner than it will be working as an associate. The question I have is, 2 spouses working together, you have no separation. You go home to dinner and you talk about the issues. And I would worry about the psychological impact more of that than the financial impact. I think the financial impact is not going to stop it. I do think the psychological impact of just you almost going to have to set ground rules. At 6:00 when you leave the practice, we will not talk practice any longer. And or you have different work schedules or different responsibilities. I worry about the psychological and the relational impact more than the financial impact.
Yeah, I would say make sure you have defined swim lanes when you're at the practice. So have clear, defined roles that people are responsible for. And when they come and kind of come into your swim lane, you remind them that, hey, I'm doing all the hiring and firing. You work the books. So I think that helps with a lot of the potential conflicts if you define that early on. But I would also think from the beginning, don't be afraid to get creative. Maybe you go out and buy a business or start a business, and maybe the spouse works for somebody else for a little while. They have a steady income coming in. It's a salary. It's a commission-based, whatever it is. But you can base all your home expenses off of that. And then the other spouse can go start building a business you can move into at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if I had 2 veterinarians that were married and wanted to start a practice, I would say one of them does relief or ER relief and works less days, makes more money, and the other one starts the practice. Because a practice being able to support 2 veterinarians right away is going to be a lot tougher than one if it's a startup. Obviously, if you're buying something that already has cash flow, it might be easier. And we're not saying people can't do it, but I do think it has to be a pretty honest discussion about what it would look like financially if you both were relying on that practice for your income. I work emergency shifts, and so I don't take money out of the practice as the owner. All our money is going into the renovation, into growing the practice right now, because we can live off my emergency salary. We set it up that way intentionally and it works well for us. But if you had 2 vets, I would look at their skill set and say, could one have a flexible schedule, work relief, still be supportive, and then the other one be the vet every day in the practice? And I think that might work a little bit better initially.
Yeah, I spoke to a startup 2 weeks ago. It's a husband-wife team. They have 6 kids.
Oh,
between
that's
6
a solid
months
5 too
and
many.
10.
Stop it.
And she's going to run the hospital. Opens July 8th. He's going to continue to work in the community, building income from that standpoint, while she's building. And they've done a great job of marketing this. They probably will have a full appointment book on day one. But I think the concept of collaborating in a startup means one probably runs the business and the other probably generates the income for the first 6 months.
I would agree.
Yeah, that'd probably be the smart way to do it. Okay, so we want to make sure that we give good resources, and I want to take a couple audience questions here in a minute. There are a couple resources that I think were really helpful to us that I wanted to make sure I got out there. So I get a lot of questions about lab startup, how to set up your lab equipment, who to use. I honestly, until I got into this, I had no idea there was so many options. There was distributors, there's lab companies, people work with people don't. Some you have to sell your child to get a contract. Some are easier. And I was overwhelmed. And so I did find, is it Rachel Lemke? Is that how I say it? Okay.
Lemke.
Rachel Lemke. Lemke?
Lemke.
Yes. She is on a lot of the media platforms, but it's Amwell Data Services. And what she will do is she will meet with you virtually and she'll talk about what do you want out of a practice? What are you looking for? How many doctors are you going to have? And she will help you kind of find the right lab contract for you. She will help negotiate it if you want her to. And she'll even come into your practice and she'll look at where you're setting up your lab and talk to you about flow and efficiency for your team. If they're running lab work, what does that look like? And she has saved a lot of people a lot of money by setting it up correctly. And she knows all the secrets. So if you want to be able to really negotiate with these lab companies without just taking whatever they offer right off the bat, she's a good person to talk to and just kind of help you envision what do you want it to look like lab wise, because there's a lot of different options. One of the other things is we did a renovation recently. There are architects you can hire, but Patterson also has a hospital design service where they'll do plans for you for free. And so they did the plans and we were able to change them up a little bit, but they will help you with that. And then we got our cabinetry and some other things like through them. And that was part of the agreement. But we needed that stuff anyways. But that was a good, much less expensive option for us for like a renovation situation. Is there anything you can think of that you want to mention before we take it to the audience?
Yeah. Architects, if they haven't done a veterinary hospital before, don't understand workflows, use a veterinary specific architect. Contractors who have never built a veterinary hospital don't have a clue about HVAC. They don't have a clue about flooring. They don't have a clue about wear and tear, about banging hips on corners. And I know you guys have never hit a corner of your cabinets as you walk through them. So I really am a big advocate. And this is an exhibit hall full of resources that you can talk to. Sitting here, we have some veterinary specific accountants who know what a profit and loss should look like for a veterinary hospital. And it's not the same profit and loss for a dental facility or a dry cleaner. So think about using veterinary specific accountants and lawyers. Most lawyers think one way, but we have some veterinary specific transactional lawyers who will make sure that your transactions meet the needs for both parties. And, don't be your own accountant. Don't be your own lawyer. Most of you don't have a law degree, and most accountants don't have a veterinary degree, and most lawyers don't have it. By the way, there are JD CPAs. I have no problem with that. But, find an expert. You don't have to be everything to everybody anymore. Don't be a jack of all trades because you're going to make huge mistakes. Hire the person that can help you focus on doing the things that you will do best, which is to be a doctor and generate income for your practice, and outsource everything you can that is not going to help you generate more income and build a team and build a leadership model.
Anything you want to add before we take questions?
It's all good stuff.
Okay. Does anyone have questions in the audience?
easy questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're not experts, by the way.
Yeah.
Am I on? Okay, cool. So for someone who's interested in practice acquisition, do you recommend, or what are the options for like putting a percentage towards that? Say that's a 3 to 5 year plan. Over the 3 to 5 years, should I be contributing a portion of something? Should I do something like with salary? Should I set up a separate bank account? What's your recommendations there?
So from a practice acquisition standpoint, are you talking about buying a practice you're working at? Okay. Then what I would, if you're not going to get some sweat equity for having worked there, just say they're going to give you 10% of the hospital because you've been working there. That 10% will be dropping down to you at the end of the year in a profit or in a return on investment. Invest that, put it away, and continue to grow that. I would also take some of your salary starting right now and put 10% into an investment fund for 3 to 5 years and learn how to live on Campbell's soup instead of Progresso. And we don't want to go back to Top Ramen. That was vet school.
I like ramen. I'll be honest.
I know, but we're talking
Cup of
the
noodles.
packages that have like
she's talking
bug
about
peas.
she's talking about ramen from the like very nice restaurant.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
No,
But it's different ramen.
start investing now, because one of the things the banks will look at, and you may eventually need a bank loan, is what do you have in the bank? What collateral are you bringing to the table? So whatever you can put away, and find a financial planner to help you do this so you're not putting in your mattress, because the last I looked, most mattresses don't pay interest. But find a good financial planner, put the money away so you can access it when you need it, and it's growing and accruing over time. And live a little frugally as you do that.
Anyone else?
For a new grad, let's say you are hoping to own a practice 3 to 5 years out or whatever that plan may be, would you recommend an MBA program or some sort of like formal financial training? Do you think that would be beneficial during that time frame to kind of build up that background, or do you prefer to learn as you go?
I think we might. I don't know if we'll have different answers. I would say no. I would spend time, like Peter said, learning from those around you, learning from mentors, people who are doing it well. There are different groups. Dr. Weinstein has veterinary ownership advocates, and you can learn a lot through those groups, and they support like future practice owners. There's a ton of trainings online, webinars, things that you can get the knowledge you need, especially for a veterinary specific practice. So I personally don't know that an MBA is going to be that important. I don't think any of us have an MBA. You have one? Oh. Well, let's hear what he has to say.
Okay, so I can do my backstory on my MBA is I was 3 years into owning my hospital, had no clue what I was doing, made every freaking mistake in the book, had the T-shirts. I didn't have any tattoos and any piercings, but I had the T-shirts for all the mistakes that you can make. And I went back and got in the MBA, and it changed my life. I wouldn't be sitting here today without that, because it gave me the ability to look outside of the veterinary profession. The worst thing we do is model against ourselves. We should be modeling against the Airbnbs, the Starbucks, the Ubers, and everything else that are out there. So MBAs are fine, but you can do a self-study MBA online. There's plenty of great TED Talks. I thank Tanasia for doing a quick promo of a business we just launched in May called Veterinary Ownership Advocates. It's an online course. It's a race-approved 24 hours of CE on everything from how to work with the banks, how to work with architects. You can take the courses as you want, and then we have monthly phone calls. We call them mastermind groups, to just talk to hospital people who want to have questions answered. And so whether you're a startup and you're going to be buying an existing practice, or starting from scratch, or even if you own a hospital already and you realize you know absolutely nothing, we've got everything covered in there. It's about 48 modules that you can take over time. I think that way, and just going to some of the CE that's here, can give you some of the tools that you need to be successful. But ultimately, hire and build a success team for those people that can help you be successful. You don't have to do it all. I mean, I got an MBA because I realized how little I knew, and I was tired of making mistakes, and we were in the middle of a recession, and I thought it was all my fault, which it wasn't.
So basically, Peter didn't have a Peter, but you have a Peter, so
Careful.
you don't need to get an MBA. Oh, sorry.
This took a bad turn.
Y'all are the
quickly.
ones that, okay.
Let me also add,
I'm turning
there's
red
some
now.
basics that you can look at that you don't have to have an MBA for. So learn a P&L statement, learn a balance sheet, learn a cash flow statement. And if you can learn to read those, you'll realize pretty quick there's some levers you can pull that'll help you make changes to your practice. But like Peter said, be a veterinarian, hire a team around you that can help you make those decisions. But I'm glad he has an MBA. I don't know that I would spend my time and money on it unless you just have that time.
Any other questions?
Dr. Staten's back there. She can help with MBA too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've talked a lot about starting and everything, but what about when you're ready to retire and you want to sell? And you want to keep your legacy. So what are your plans? Do you want to do like an ESOP? Are you okay with selling to a corporation, or do you train up your associate to take over?
So I have a vision for our practice to be a place that we train young practice owners. And so my goal is to have people come in that want to be practice owners, teach and train them, let them learn how to be a vet, but also how to be an owner, and then potentially finance and help them find their own practices. And so the goal would be to have those type of personalities come through and hopefully find someone who could take over our practice eventually. I'd like to keep it private. I don't know what's going to happen, so I don't want to make any promises that I can't keep. But I think if I continue to kind of look for that next person and really feed into younger practice owners, that hopefully that would be the way that it would work out. And we do have another owner. We have a technician who is our practice manager, and we gave her a small percentage of the practice, and she's our eyes and ears and at the practice every day. So we do have somebody else who is a part of our team that's vital to our success. But I think it's really important to, like you said, start thinking ahead and having a plan for sure.
I would say we've sold other businesses as well. It's not always about the most money, right? So there's other things that we look at in a deal structure because not every deal is apples to apples. There's always going to be some nuances that are different. You have to figure out what's important to you. Are they going to treat the veterinarians right? Are they going to continue to work with their comp plans? Are the technicians going to feel like they have value? There's a lot of things that go into, selling a practice. So I think when we get to that point where we're ready to sell, we'll probably come up with our whiteboard of these are the things that are important to us and who's going to best fit, that model.
And that's not to say that there's not people that have sold to corporations and been able to still have a successful practice and people be happy. I think if your practice gets so big, it is going to be hard to sell it privately. And so I think I'm more inclined to keep it at a point that I can probably have someone be able to purchase it. But there is that component of, are you laughing at me?
No, I'm going to rebut.
Okay, go. Let's hear it.
So, sad story. I did sell my hospital to a corporation many years ago when corporations were just new to the industry. And they sold it back to a private party because they couldn't staff it. I'm in California. They couldn't find veterinarians. And that private party then sold it to a Banfield. So my hospital has gone through 3 or 4 ownerships in the last 20 years. And my legacy is like nothing, at least not from that standpoint. But I encourage each and every one of you to look to keep independent hospitals independent and keep your legacy and keep your story and build something that contributes to your community and is a vital part of your community. And if you can build a $10 million hospital and you've got 10 doctors there and they each want to own 10% and you've got somebody to do the management and they can still be doctors and you can keep that legacy going, find ways to keep independent veterinary medicine independent. And you have 2 clients in your life as a veterinarian. The one you see today and the one that you take that will pay to buy your practice 10, 15, 20 years down the road. How you take care of this practice will determine what you get from this buyer. So every day your focus is on that client in front of you. And if you can build a team, doctors, client service people, credential technicians, assistants, who believe in your vision, believe in your mission, believe in your values, and grow your practice, I'm all about ESOPs as well. They're extremely hard to manage,
Very hard.
tremendous amount of legal oversight that's required of them. But I have no problem with minority shareholders as well who have equity and are there to help grow the business. And we need to do that more and more in veterinary practices to keep good people. And it's not just about the money, it's having a voice. And even if you only own 5 or 10%, you have a voice. So in answer to your question, do what you can to keep that legacy. Find ways to build a team of doctors who want to be a part of it. And many doctors don't want to own because they think they have to manage. Well, then make a manager a partner as well. But they need the doctor because you can't have a hospital in most states without a doctor. So I'm all for keeping things independent from that standpoint. Keep your legacy.
I think that is a great question to end on because it was the ending of a practice. And we are essentially out of time. I feel like it flew by. I appreciate Dr. Weinstein being here. I appreciate Shane being here.
I didn't have a choice.
I know. That's why.
Thank you, Dr. T.
If you want to follow us on social media, at Questions with Crocker is on every social media platform. You also can watch us on YouTube. We do episodes weekly. You can submit questions through any of our platforms and we answer them on our episodes. And if you want to leave a review, you can do that on Apple or Spotify. We love hearing feedback and we'll be around for a while afterwards if anyone has questions they want to come up and ask us. But thank you guys so much for coming. We really appreciate it.